everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. Tonight we are going to be making quinoa cakes. First of all, I want to thank everybody so much for all the support after my first class. It was received so well, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. It really made my day. I love to cook and I love to share it with you all, so it's a great way for me to pass this quarantine time. On that note, because it had such a wonderful response, we are going to make this a regular thing. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., at least until this quarantine is over, you can find me here in this kitchen teaching you a new fun recipe. There is one caveat to that. My husband is a first responder, and since he is my cameraman, if his schedule changes, our class may have to change. But I promise I will let you know as soon as I do, and hopefully we can stick with Wednesdays at 7 o'clock. So tonight we are making quinoa cakes, and there's a couple reasons that I decided to share this recipe with you. First of all, it's delicious, which is always the most important reason to make a recipe. Second of all, it's super easy. We always want things that are easy to make so that when we're going through our day, we're not worried about putting it together. And third of all, it's really versatile. A recipe being versatile is so important to me. In my real non-quarantine life, I'm an acupuncturist, I run a business, and I'm always looking for things to make in bulk and then eat throughout the week. But if you're eating the exact same thing over and over again with leftovers, it can be really boring. So I love making something that I can make and put into different meals. So I'm going to teach you how to make quinoa cakes, and then I'm going to show you 4 different ways that you can incorporate them and have just really delicious meals, lunches, and dinners. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by making a dipping sauce. Now, if you just want to eat these quinoa cakes plain, you absolutely can. They're delicious, and you should have a little dipping sauce for them. So what we're going to do is we are going to start off with either veganese, mayonnaise, or yogurt. Whichever you prefer, whichever you have in the house. I'm giving you all the options because, you know, we don't all have the same things in our house, and I don't want you running out to the food store just for a simple ingredient. So like I said, veganese, mayonnaise, yogurt is going to be our good start. We're going to use about a ½ cup of that as our base. And the thing with sauces, little dipping sauce, is it doesn't have to be exact. You can just have about the right amount, as long as it tastes good to you. So let's dump this in our little mini dipping bowl. We are also going to put a little bit of lemon juice, just a touch of lemon juice. So I'm not even going to use the juicer today. We're just going to squeeze a little bit in because we're not going to use this whole thing. A juicer will squish it right out. We probably only need maybe about a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of juice. So when you are squeezing a lemon like this, just make sure you put your other hand underneath it to catch those pits because we don't want to be crunching into a lemon pit. All right, so here we go, just enough to give it that little bit of zest. And as you can see, we have a little lemon pit, so it's a good thing we caught it. Sorry, I'm just gonna get my scraps bowl so we can keep everything out of the way. The next part of this dipping sauce is gonna be some fresh basil. If you don't have fresh basil, you can use dried basil, or you can use any other herb. It can be dill, it can be thyme, whatever you have. You wanna use about not even a ¼ cup, a couple tablespoons of fresh herbs, or just a teaspoon of a dried herb. Now remember that dried herbs are a concentrated version of fresh herbs. So if you ever have a recipe that's calling for a fresh herb and you only have the dried version, that's okay. Just use a smaller. Going to roll them, we're just gonna roll them up. We okay? Yeah?
Sorry, that was baking.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. There are little technical difficulties. Yeah, so we're just going to roll them up, and then we're going to take our knife and chop it into really thin little ribbons. Because the herb is so tiny, it's hard to just chop one piece at a time. So that allows us to get these really flavorful ribbons and cut it all up together. So you're going to put that right in your sauce, mix it up. We're not even going to add any salt and pepper to this. It's just going to be as it is because it's just a nice little dipping sauce, an aioli, if you will. So once this is all mixed well. We're just gonna put it aside and we're gonna save it until our quinoa cakes are ready. Okay, get my towels. All right, so next we're gonna start on our quinoa cakes. We're gonna start with a nice big bowl, mix everything together. We're gonna start obviously with quinoa. Now quinoa is a really fantastic grain for a cake like this. You know, you can use any grain you want to make a cake. You could use rice, you could use barley, but the thing about quinoa is it's so light and fresh that when you make a cake out of it, it doesn't sit, it's not too heavy. So you can really mix it with anything and really have it be a nice, light, fresh ingredient. The other thing is that quinoa is considered a superfood, which is awesome, and it has a ton of protein, a ton of vitamins and minerals in it. So from a health perspective, quinoa is a really great addition to your diet. So what we used is about 2.5 cups of cooked quinoa. Now I say about because what I did is it's 1 cup of uncooked quinoa cooked to the directions on the bag or box. So most of the time it's going to be 1 cup of quinoa, 2 cups of water, bring it to a boil, simmer until it's fully cooked. You'll notice that our quinoa has nice light pieces. That's how you're going to know that it's fully cooked. It's going to look light, it's going to feel light, it's not going to feel like a seed anymore. So you're going to take all of that and put it into your mixing bowl. And then we're just going to add our ingredients in. So we're going to start with about 1/4 cup of spinach that we squeezed down. So I used frozen spinach today. And when you have a frozen vegetable that you're going to put into a patty form, that you're going to end up pan frying, you're going to want to squeeze all the water out. So if you have about 1/4 cup of frozen spinach, if you squeeze all the water out, which all I did was warm it up, put it in my hand and squeeze the bejesus out of it, it's going to leave you with about this much spinach. So it's already chopped. However, I like to make sure that it really is in nice little pieces. So we're just going to chop it up again, add it in our bowl. Our next ingredient is going to be garlic, because what good recipe doesn't have a good garlic punch to it? So our trick from last time, we cut off the stem edge and hit it with the flat end of the knife, and it helps just pull this skin right off. So we're going to chop it up really nice and small. Now, this garlic isn't getting cooked in any other form except for when it's in the patty. If you have ever had raw garlic, you know that it is really pungent. So we want to make sure it's chopped up really well so that when the quinoa cake gets cooked, it's going to get cooked along with it and you don't have that pungent bite of raw garlic when you get too big of a piece. And we're going to toss that right in as well. Okay. A little onion. I like to use a red onion with this because it just makes it look pretty. The red, the green from the spinach, we're going to throw a little carrot in there. It's just going to give it a really beautiful look. Chop that end off. And again, with this onion, you want to pull these softer edges off. Put them in our garbage. And we're going to want to cut it really small. Same thing. You have this really wonderfully caramelized cooked quinoa cake. The last thing you want is this big punch of raw onion right in your face. So our little trick, we cut off this on the grow end. We make a little grid. Now with this onion, we're only going to need about 1/4 cup of onion, not a lot of onion. And that's because our quinoa is going to be the base of the cake, and if we put too many ingredients, too many bigger, chunkier ingredients, it's not going to hold together well. So as you'll see, I'm going to actually chop mine up a little finer. Always remember, be careful those fingers. I don't have a good garlic or good onion trick to make your eyes stop watering. So if you watch me live, my eyes are definitely going to water. So just don't touch your face with your fingers with the onion, and that's my best advice for you. And if your eyes are tearing and you have to close them, stop chopping with your knife so we don't have any accidents. All right, throw that right in there. Okay. We are going to put a little squeeze of fresh lemon in there again. This is kind of going to finish off the rest of our lemon. Just gives the quinoa cake a nice light brightness. We got to get our grater for our carrots. So we're going to put carrots in. Now, I like to grate my carrots to put them into my quinoa cake. And the reason that I do that is because, again, we are not going to cook these carrots otherwise. So small little pieces that will heat up really easily and cook through, that will allow this carrot to be nice and soft and not a big chunky bite. So if you have a grater, we are going to use the big grater side, and we're just going to cut off the dry end of the carrot. We don't really want that in our recipe. And we're going to just grate it through. Now, depending on the size of your carrots, one medium carrot is probably fine. 2 small carrots are okay. Again, if we put too much added stuff in here, the quinoa cake is going to fall apart. And we don't want that. We want it to be a really delicious little bite that we can use in lots of different ways. Always be careful when you're grating. You don't want to get your knuckles in there. So as you Here we go. If you don't have a grater, you can chop your carrot up really nice and small. But like I said, please chop it as small as possible. It will help the cake be held together and it'll taste better. So we can throw that carrot right into there. The reason that we don't have to squeeze the juice out of the carrot like we did with the spinach is because there's not as much water and it's a stronger held together vegetable by its fiber. So it's not going to leach out water so much when it cooks as something like a spinach will. So now we're going to add in our eggs. For this recipe, we use 2 large eggs. So we're going to crack them into a separate bowl. The reason why we always crack eggs into a separate bowl is just in case we have a bad egg, the yolk is bad, it's a bloody yolk. That way we don't have to waste all of these ingredients. The other reason why we put it into a separate bowl is that we want to whisk the ingredients together, or the eggs together, before we put them into our mixture. We could crack them right into the bowl. It does save us a dish, it saves us a little extra time, but the eggs won't be mixed as thoroughly through. Okay, so we're going to dump those eggs in. A little disclaimer, if you are using hot quinoa, please let it cool first. It's easier to handle with your hands when we're getting ready to make the cakes, but also if you have hot quinoa and you put scrambled eggs in here, you're going to get actual scrambled eggs. It's going to cook the egg. So make sure your quinoa is really nice and cooled from you cooking it first. Our next ingredient is going to be about a tablespoon of mustard. Again, just a nice little additive. We're going to do about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Please measure if you are uncomfortable. And about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. With these quinoa cakes, I encourage you, add all different kinds of flavors into them. Sometimes I make it more of a southwestern quinoa cake, and I will put things like smoked paprika and chili powder. Sometimes I'll make it more of an Italian version. It'll be basil and parsley. So whatever it is that you really like the flavors of, go ahead and throw it right on in there. So you want to mix this really, really well together. And as you can see, as we mix it, that pretty color palette that I talked about by using the red onion along with the carrot and the spinach is really starting to show up. We eat with our eyes as well as our mouth, so we want it to look pretty as well as taste pretty. Okay. All right, so I think we're ready to head over to the stove and start getting ready to pan fry these guys, okay? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna end up using one of these really nice big flat skillets. we're going to be pan frying. Now the difference between pan frying and sauteing is when we saute, we're using just a little bit of oil, just enough to coat the food and cooking it down. When we're pan frying, we're using more oil, so it's going to be a nice base of oil in our pan so that it fries the bottom of that, whatever it is that we're cooking today, our quinoa cakes. If we filled this all the way up with oil and dipped it all the way in, that would be deep frying. So today we're going to pan fry. We're going to turn our nice big pan to about medium-high heat. We want it to be really hot. We want to get this pan sizzling really well. And we're going to use, I like to use coconut oil to pan fry these quinoa cakes with. The reason I like to use coconut oil is twofold. If we use olive oil has a really low flash point, which means that when we heat it up, if it gets too hot, it'll start to smoke and it'll be a rancid oil and you'll taste that in your foods. So we want to use different oils, maybe a canola oil, a peanut oil, avocado oil, grapeseed oil. They all have higher flash points, as well as coconut oil. And the reason that I really like coconut oil is because it has such a decadent flavor to it. Coconut oil, when it melts, has that almost buttery taste. So by pan frying these in our coconut oil, we are gonna get that really buttery taste. So I'm gonna take these two, it's about 3 to 4 tablespoons of coconut oil, and pop those right in my pan, and we're gonna let it really heat up. Oh, hi Betty, you making an appearance again? And we're really gonna let this heat up. We wanna put the quinoa cakes in the pan, and as soon as it hits, we wanna hear that sizzle. You can, of course, make these just in your hands, just squeeze them up. But I like to use a measuring cup. It helps keep them similar size, and also when we put them in, we can use the back end to squish them down, and it allows them to become that nice flat picture of a quinoa cake that we want. When it comes to the type of pan we're using for this, obviously you guys can see the ideal shape, but you really want to make sure you're going to use something that's not going to be sticky. So if you have a non-stick pan, that's going to work. But we want to avoid any chemicals that we're heating up our food on, like Teflon that nonstick is made out of. So ceramic or a really well-seasoned cast iron pan is going to be really great. So we're just waiting for this oil to melt down all the way and get nice and hot. All right, so what we want to do before we start putting a whole bunch of these quinoa cakes in the pan, we want to make one small one to make sure that it's going to stick together really well. If you take 4 and plop them right in and they all fall apart, then you've kind of wasted 4 quinoa cakes of ingredients because we didn't test it first. So what I encourage you to do is just kind of make a nice little small quinoa cake. Really try and squish it in together. If we squish it together, that allows us to push it together, and then the heat will allow it to cook more. So as we know it gets hot enough, we're just gonna pop that baby right there. You can hear it sizzling a little bit. That means that we know that it's cooking well. Because it's small, we don't have to let it cook a long time. We're just gonna let it crisp up so that we can, like I said, make sure it's not gonna fall apart on us. If you're on a gas range, if you have to adjust your heat because you feel like it's getting too hot, that's totally fine. Do that. If you're on an electric range, it's not going to adjust as well, so it's better to go lower and then heat it up, because once it's too hot, you're not going to be able to lower that. All right. So good learning moment here is because I put this cake on here, and it just doesn't look like it's holding together well enough. As I go to touch it, it looks like it's kind of cracking apart, which means that the pieces that are holding it together aren't doing its job. See that? It fell apart on us. So we know that this guy wouldn't have worked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my heat off. I'm going to put him over here, and we're going to add another egg. Adding another egg is going to be, our egg is our binder, right? So adding this other egg is going to help bind it together. Now you can make this recipe a million times and use 2 eggs, and then another time you make it, you may have to add in 3 eggs, and that's because eggs are not always the exact same size. Even if they're large, extra large, especially if you're buying organic eggs, you're not going to get them all the same size. So just dump that egg right in there. And mix that all right in. Okay. And as I'm mixing it, it actually just looks like it's going to stick together a lot better. So you can do another tester if you need to, but I am pretty confident that we are on the right path here. Fingers crossed. If not, guess we'll find out together. So we are going to use, again, we're going to use our 1/3 of a cup. You can adjust it, but I find the 1/3 of a cup is a really great size for the quinoa cake, and it holds it together pretty well. So we're just going to pack it in nice and tight so it's nice and level, and then we're going to pop it right onto our pan. Now, whatever we dump this in with, your back of your measuring cup, you're just going to push down a little bit, and it's going to give it a nice flat cake looking appearance. Now each cake we put in, we're going to let cook for about 3 to 4 minutes. I know it's really tempting to like play around with this cake once it's on the pan, but I promise you, the longer you let it sit without you messing with it, the better it's going to stick together, and the better that brown crisp on the bottom of it is going to be. So we're gonna, because of the size of my pan, I'm able to do about 4 quinoa cakes all at the same time, which is great because I have four dishes to show you on what to make with these guys. Good. Drop this guy in too. Okay. So, I have a confession to make. My oven is a little slanted. Because it is slanted, all of the oil kind of pools to one side. So when I am making something like this, halfway through you'll notice that I will switch the pan around so that all of the cakes kind of get the same oil on them. If your oven is flat, your range is flat, then you don't have to do that. But if it's uneven, because honestly most of yours probably are, and you can tell by if the oil pulls to one side, you're just going to want to give that a nice little twist and allow it to cook all the way through. Go in and see what's happening there. So for my people who are local to the Jersey Shore area, I just want to give a shout out to A&J Produce. That is where almost all of this produce came from. They delivered right to my door. You just have to have a minimum order of $35, and their produce is fantastic. It's not organic. I do usually prefer organic. However, you know, it's better to be fed than not fed at all. So to me, I'd rather have the produce that I really want and know that it's coming from a great source, even though it's not organic. So again, it is not a paid commercial. I just want to give you guys all the information that I have so that you can continue to make really great culinary and nutritional decisions and fill your bellies with some good food. All right, so it looks like a couple of our cakes are ready to flip. Now, when we do flip these, we want to, as best we can, kind of get it in one swoop. I'm not always great at it. You want to push it under and flip it. If we take too many pushes, it's going to fall apart on us. So we want to use a nice flat spatula. I like to use one with slits in it so that the oil can come down. Oops, that's not ideal. You want to grab it and flip it right over. All right, let's put the other few. right, cameraman, can everybody see how beautifully golden brown those guys are? That's what you want them to look like. If you flip it and it's not a pretty golden brown, you flipped them too soon. That's all right. Leave them on this side. After a couple minutes, flip them back over. So as we let these guys cook, I just want to again remind you, if you have any requests for recipes, please let me know. Shoot me a message. I really love healthy food, but I was born and raised in a very traditional Italian-American family and can make all different kinds of recipes, from those really heavy, decadent, comfort food Italian foods to these really nice, light quinoa cakes. So anything you guys want, please shoot me a message. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, check out my stories. I'm always posting things that I'm making, and if you like one of those and want to know the recipe, we absolutely can incorporate them onto here. As these guys are cooking, so as these guys cook, we're gonna, you do it in layers. If you have enough room for 4, you do 4, you put 4 more in. I'm only gonna do these 4 with you so that we can move on to showing you how to use them with the rest of all of these meals. But that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna cook the rest of those bad boys after we get off this live, and I'm probably gonna eat a whole bunch of them because they're delicious. So the other reason it's really important to let these cook is because there is raw egg in here. You're not really supposed to be eating raw egg. It's not great for you. It could have salmonella. So if you don't let these cook as long as they're supposed to, you could be ingesting raw egg, and that's dangerous as well. Now, as we're ready to take these off, you're gonna notice that the edge around these quinoa cakes start to get brown. And that's how we know that that other side is cooking well. Again, we don't wanna be constantly checking them. They're gonna fall apart. But we can see that this brown edge is really coming good. And as we press on them, they're not squishy. They've really firmed up all the way through the inside, which means that they've cooked not just on the outer edge, but also all the way through. And you can see that it's a lot easier to pick them up, and that's because it's cooked all the way through and really firm. So we're just gonna place those right on a plate. If you really want to pat the oil out of them, you could put a paper towel or a towel down first and put them right on the towel. All right. Normally I'd be cooking with the hood on, but my hood's really loud and you guys wouldn't be able to hear me. So that's why we're not cooking with that on. But if you do have a hood and you're pan frying, I definitely recommend you putting that vent on so it'll take all the smoke out of your kitchen. All right, so let's come back over. Oh wait, we'll watch out for not stepping on Betty. But we will come on over and I'm gonna show you all the wonderful ways to use these guys. So first and foremost, you can obviously just take one of these bad boys, put a little sauce on it, our dipping sauce that we made earlier, and eat them up. They're a delicious snack to have as your mid-morning snack, afternoon snack, even at night around, if you're watching TV around 9 o'clock, you're feeling a little munchies. These are a great thing to have because they're really high in fiber. And if we are going to eat late at night, high fiber foods are the best for us because they'll move through our digestive system a lot quicker. So we do have our dipping sauce. Number one of my favorite ways is a nice bowl of soup. And this is gonna act as our bread. So we can just eat our soup with our delicious quinoa cake. This is escarole and bean soup. I know a lot of you asked me for this recipe and I promise I will get that to you. The next way that we can do it is to put a little bit of meat on top of it. So quinoa cakes are great, and as somebody who doesn't really eat meat, they can be my main dish. They can be the star of a dish. But my husband, our wonderful cameraman, is a carnivore and he likes meat. So a lot of my recipes I make, let's save that from Betty. There you go. Okay, a lot of my recipes I make so that you could have them vegetarian or with meat because of our household. And I find that's really important for a lot of households in America now. Some of us like meat, some of us don't, and it doesn't mean we can't share a meal together. So the way that I'm going to show you this is to make a nice little stack. So we have a quinoa cake, and I have some chicken salad right here, and we're just going to put this chicken salad right on top. And honestly, that right there can make a really delicious light lunch. If you wanted to, you can absolutely make yourself a nice little quinoa cake sandwich and have your chicken salad or whatever kind of meat you want to put right in the middle, and you can make 2 of those, just like that. Next is another veggie delight. You can have your salad with your quinoa cake as your main star. So this is just a nice romaine and basil salad with craisins, a little bit of cheese, walnuts, and onions. Put a quinoa cake on there. That's a fantastic dinner or lunch. And our last option, which will probably be my dinner tonight, is using your quinoa cake as your veggie burger. Many veggie burgers are just this. There's some vegetables with some grains holding it together, right? So here I just have some really delicious bread, avocado, tomato, a little piece of cheese. I'm just gonna take it, flip it, and here we go. So we have these 4 really, really delicious options to eat our quinoa cakes on top of just dipping it into a really good sauce. And honestly, you will most of the time, if these are in my refrigerator, you're gonna find me just standing in front of the refrigerator, eating one of them, trying to figure out what I'm gonna eat for lunch. So I hope you guys really enjoy this recipe. I hope you use it. I hope it's nice and versatile for you and you can find a use for every meal for every person in your family. Again, if you have any questions, please shoot me a message. Once this is over, I am going to post this video to my YouTube account as well as my personal page, and the recipe will be posted tomorrow on my blog, the Green Banana blog. So again, if you guys have any questions, reach out. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home if you can. And I'll see you next week at 7 o'clock.